castle. So the Dutch became very upset and thought of making attacks on the Portuguese. They eventually made 2 attacks in 2 different years, but unfortunately for the Dutch, those attacks from them was never successful because they were defeated by the Portuguese in those 2 attacks. And it happened in the year first, 1596, and then the second year was 1625. But in 1637, our locals thought of helping the Dutch to capture the castle from the Portuguese. And the reason being that they thought that the Dutch will come in and then put a stop to the slave trade. So after helping the Dutch to capture the castle from the Portuguese, they rather came to continue the slave trade. Now when the Dutch took over, they spent 235 years in the castle. So when you do some calculations, almost 400 years was used by the Portuguese and the Dutch in the castle for slave trade. Now for me to break it down for you to understand it well, now the Portuguese never came with the direct intentions because they had it in mind to do slave trade, but they had to lure their way to the locals in order to capture their trust. So the Portuguese actually used 35 years of their staying to engage the locals and gain their trust, and use the remaining 115 years for slave trade. Now the Dutch coming to them, because they were held by the locals, they also used 30 years to actually gain the trust and use the remaining 205 years for slave trade. But in 1860s and 1870s that was when slave trade was abolished totally. So the Dutch saw nothing relevant again in the castle, so they sold the castle to the British. And when the British bought the castle in 1872, they never used this for any activities that is trading, but rather made this to be their administrative centers. When the British were in Ghana, they settled in Cape Coast Castle. Then they were doing their slave trade in the Cape Coast Castle. But when they bought Elmina Castle, it was serving as their administrative purposes. Now the British, however, spent 85 years in the castle. Administrative purposes. 6th of March 1957 was the year Ghanaians were able to get their independence from the British, who by chance Asajifo Kwame Nkrumah led them to get that independence. When they took over, Ghanaians were able to get the properties from the British. That includes Elmina Castle. And when Ghanaians took over, we have spent 68 years in the castle, not for any other thing, but for our tourist attraction. So now when you put the numbers together, this castle is actually 543 years old. fill it up, and then lift the bridge over there so no one can get access to the castle. So it was a form of a barrier for no one to come inside the castle. Over there you could see a square thing in the middle there. In it is a navigational compass that was built by the Dutch to check time and directions. So they placed a long stick in the middle there. Wherever the shadow lies, determine the time that very day was. And up here you could see these cannons. These are the original cannons brought by the Portuguese to aim fire their enemies. And let's look up there. You will see a white building at the top there. That building is a fort, and the name is Fort San Jago. It was built by the Dutch in 1665. The Dutch kept their soldiers to be protecting and monitoring the castle inside. Pardon?
How many years after?
Oh, 1665. So like they captured the castle 1637. So if you check the difference, about 23 years, should I put it, if I'm right? Yeah, 23 years or so. No, 33 years, yes, 33. 33 years, because 1637 and then, so 33 years or so, or 23, any of them. And this was where they kept their soldiers there to be protecting and capturing monitoring the castle, from the outside and inside and around the castle. Now, talking about the African women who were raped, there were chances of pregnancy. So when those women were pregnant, they were never allowed to join the ships for them to be transported, but rather they freed the women to go back to wherever they were coming from. But unfortunately for the African women, they forgotten where they were coming from. So the European soldiers actually built stone houses, about 7 of those stone houses in the community. But currently, 6 of those stone houses have been demolished. It's left with 1, and that one has been sustained to be a restaurant owned by a man called Dr. Papa Kwesindo. I am just talking about just this building, the one that has the roofing to be reddish. It's a restaurant now. Those women were in those houses to give birth. After 6 years of giving birth, they brought their children back to the castle for the children to be trained, educated, and also to be given foreign names. So they gave their children European names like Anderson, Johnson, Van der Poel, Van Dyke, all those European names that you know. Now, out of what their children came out with, they were termed as mulattoes because they had mixed race. And the reason why the Europeans took them as their children was because they came out with a white skin color. So they took them as their children, trained them to be like them. So when the mulattoes grew up, majority did the enslavery some. Few ones escaped, mingled, and stayed in the localities, the coastal lines of Africa. So in Ghana, when we talk about education, we're talking about Elmina Castle, and it started with the mulattoes because they were the first people to start schooling in Ghana. They brought up educational system in Ghana.
Yeah, all of the whites always accepting of their children.
They never accepted their children. Majority never did. But the children, out of what they came out with, wanted to be like them. The mothers that gave birth to those children were freed afterwards. But some wanted to see their children, of which their children were never ready to see them. So they had to turn as domestic servants for the Europeans to see their children. And this was a building for the commissioner of the Dutch. This is where they held their offices. Yes. So this is where we bring our tour to an end. I would like to conclude by saying the Portuguese were the first European country to arrive here in the year 1471. They built the castle 1482. The Dutch took over from them 1637. Same Dutch sold the castle to the British 1872, and then the British handed over to Ghanaians 1957. Portuguese spent 155, Dutch spent 235, British spent 85, and Ghana have spent 68. When you put the numbers together, this castle is 543 years. The largest